All right. Big Friday night here at the Voice of College Football, because it's a big Friday night in college football. Welcome to the College Football Show, nighttime edition. And appreciate everyone stopping by. Let's get right to it. With 3 games on the docket tonight, my first and foremost attention was drawn to the big names, the big brands, as it typically is, which turned out to be the worst game. Oregon, way too much for Michigan State. Michigan State in no way prepared for Oregon tonight. They're being completely bludgeoned. The Oregon running game is just annihilating Michigan State's front. Jordan James is having a banner night, and Oregon is destroying Michigan State. It's even worse than 31-0. Even worse than that. It could have been worse, but Dillon Gabriel threw 2 red zone interceptions in the first half. Otherwise, again, it could be much worse than 31-0 Oregon. Or maybe by now it's 38 or 45-0. I don't know. But Aiden Childs has no chance in this game. Michigan State's offensive line dominated by the Oregon pass rush. And yes, it's been Oregon domination. Michigan State, are they a decent football team? Depends on your definition of decent. They're an okay football team. They are Maryland. They are, who knows who else at this point. Let's watch them play a few other teams. I don't know the schedule off the top of my hands, but you've got the Indianas of the world and the Rutgers of the world. So don't be surprised if Michigan State knocks off somebody like that, even though those teams are playing better right now. Those teams have not played Boston College, Ohio State, and Oregon, especially the final 2 that I just mentioned. So let's not jump the gun too much on the exploits of Rutgers, Indiana, and others and be too down on Michigan State. They are playing 2 of the best 5 teams in the country the past 2 weekends. No, they're not ready for it. Last count, Oregon led in total yardage, 471 to 130. And again, they left 2 touchdowns on the board. 2 exceptional plays by Michigan State defensive backs. That Malik Spencer is a player for Michigan State, not just on the kick in the end zone off Dillon Gabriel, the one that wasn't such a horrible mistake or decision by Gabriel, because that was one of the best interceptions I've seen in a long time. Check it out, Malik Spencer, that kept the game, I believe, at no score at that point. Michigan State could have scored the first touchdown of the ball game, but Aiden Childs fumbled the ball inside the 5-yard line. Did you see where Michigan State is 3rd in the nation in turnovers offensively? You're not going to beat Ohio State and Oregon turning the ball over as much as they have. You're not going to beat them, period, if you're Michigan State, but certainly you can't hang in the game. And now they've been outscored by those 2 teams 69-7 the last 2 weeks. And then Gabriel, the second interception was a really bad decision. Knowing angles as well as he does, he's the most prolific passer in the history of college football. Let that sink in. And that is not debatable. Now understand what the word prolific means. It means statistically. That doesn't mean he's the best or anywhere close to the best, not even in the 10 best or the 50 best. in the history of college football. But he is the most prolific quarterback in the history of college football, experienced, excellent, considered by most to be the best quarterback in the Big Ten entering this season. I kind of questioned that, and now we're seeing it to a certain extent, although he's throwing it like an 80% completion clip. That's an interesting argument right there between Drew Aller, Miller Moss, Dylan Gabriel would be at the top of the board. Then you would probably say Will Howard possibly has a shot to be the best quarterback in the Big Ten. And Luke Altmaier might be in that discussion if he continues his upward trajectory. But Oregon, way too much for Michigan State. Again, Jordan James in the offensive line, way too much. The defensive front for Oregon dominating. Aiden Childs doesn't have a chance, 31-0. The better game is in Vegas. Have you been checking on this one? And this is the one I've been watching. I was watching both games at the same time. UNLV has basically 2 punt blocks. That's tough to do. The first one was such a punt block that the Syracuse punter pulled the ball and didn't even try to kick it because the guy was right in his face. Then they just blocked a punt for a touchdown a few minutes ago to knot the game with Syracuse at 31 all. Kyle McCord threw an interception down near the goal line. Not a terrible, terrible decision or pass. He just didn't give the defensive back enough credit to turn his head at the last second to catch the football, and it was a great play by Jackson Woodard of UNLV. And Vegas, as of last check, now they might have scored a touchdown or might have put some points on the board here. Yes, they have, 38-31. So I think Syracuse has been the better team most of the night, not by much. Very competitive game, really good game, but UNLV is looking to go to 3-0 against Power 5 teams. Beat Houston by 3 touchdowns, beat Kansas by a field goal, leading Syracuse by a touchdown. Kyle McCord has had to throw 1 million passes in this ball game to keep Syracuse competitive. Syracuse led 14-0. Vegas came back with 21 straight points. Syracuse went on a 17-0 run, and now Vegas is on a 17-0 run to retake the lead, 38-31. All right, comments and questions, we will take those in the chat. If you want me to respond to one of your comments or your questions there in the chat, please leave it. And we appreciate the super chat contribution so we can identify your comment or question. And now we get to the phone lines. And yes, we are going to go for a full hour unless you would like us to go further. So with your support, we will extend past the hour. All right, let's get to the calls. We've got Caden the Man on the line.
How we doing, Mark?
I am doing great tonight. How are you?
Not surprised about Oregon pulling out the last-minute weapons against Michigan State.
Yeah, just way too much.
Boring Oregon. 2 interceptions with Dylan Gabriel. Yeah, I don't see you guys winning against Ohio State and Eugene after next week. I don't see it.
Yeah, I think Ohio State's a better team, but certainly Oregon can win that game. I don't think there's any question about that. Nobody's going to be surprised if Oregon beats Ohio State.
Now, you just take that back there. You take it back, Mark. Ohio State's a better team this year, plus on defense. They have played way better, shutting down opponents.
I have no reason to take anything back that I've stated.
You know what? You remind me of Tim. Just earlier, Tim and Matt were talking crap about my Buckeyes.
You and who?
Your buddy Tim and Matt, your 2 Trojan buddies.
Oh, Tim and Matt. Okay, yeah.
Talking crap about my Buckeyes when I was at least giving them a little heads up about playing Ohio State next year. I said at USC, if against Ohio State, if they were going to play Ohio State this week, we would be USC. No questions asked.
Well, again, you're making a statement that the first statement is not ridiculous because you're talking about arguably the best team in the country, certainly in the top 5. But your second statement, that's where you always veer off the rails there, Caden, because yes, USC could beat Ohio State on a good day. Is it likely? No, it's not highly likely, but they could certainly win that game against Ohio State.
It's not likely because I'm telling you, the defense, Ohio State defense plays 4 quarters, and they can play lights out for 4 quarters.
They have not been playing 4 quarters. You've not been paying attention. Ohio State's defense has not been playing 4 quarters, and Ohio State's defense last week was playing a Michigan State offense that you're seeing the production from the Michigan State offense tonight against Oregon. Michigan State was able to move the ball better against Ohio State than they are tonight against Oregon. God gave you 2 eyes, Caden. He gave you a brain and 2 eyes, and you can watch the football games and evaluate it.
I've watched the tape twice, and I'm pretty sure that I at least.
Well, you haven't had the opportunity to watch the tape on tonight's Oregon-Michigan State game.
Well, I was watching the Oregon-Michigan State game.
Yes. Oregon defensively has been more dominant against Michigan State than Ohio State was.
Okay, listen. Oregon pulled out all the stops against Michigan State just because they had bad calls.
Oregon is pulling out all the stops against Michigan State? I don't know that you know the definition of pulling out all the stops.
Well, I'm saying they pulled out all their weapons on defense just to shut Michigan State out after Dillon Gabriel made those 2 interceptions.
They're playing their defense. Yeah, they're playing their defensive personnel. They're running their defense.
And I'll say this on my part. Ohio State's going to pull their best weapons out against Oregon, against Drew Aller and Penn State, and especially against Alex Orji in Michigan. When they do, that's when you're really going to see Ohio State dominate 3 games. And those 3 games I have are my blowouts to shutouts. Those will either be a blowout game or a shutout game by Ohio State. No questions asked.
I know you're already on the record as to saying that Ohio State's going to win those 3 games by 49 points each.
And I did. Thank you for recalling your notes correctly, Mark. I appreciate that.
Okay. Yeah. And I am telling you right now that it is virtually impossible, meaning a 1 out of a million shot that Ohio State's going to win all 3 of those games by at least 49 points. If they win 1 of those games by 49 points, I will be extremely impressed.
Well, what if they win all 3, like I said?
That's not going to happen, but I would be flabbergasted. I will applaud you to no end if Ohio State wins those 3 games, each by 49 points or more.
All right, I'll let you know this. If Ohio State wins if they win 1 game by a blowout, you can say I was correct. No, you're backpedaling.
You're backpedaling. You came on here and said that Ohio State's going to win those 3 games by at least 49 points, all 3 of them. That's what you said. Now you're backpedaling to 1 out of 3.
No, I'm like kind of figuring out what you're saying.
Which would make you correct on 1 out of 3. That's not very good.
See, I'm trying to picture out what you're saying. So you're saying my Buckeyes can win 1 of the 3 games by a blowout or a shutout?
I'm saying they could win all 3 by a blowout, or they could win all 3 close, or they could lose 1. They could lose 2. I don't think they will. I think that they'll probably lose 1 of those games, but they certainly could win all 3.
I have the confidence enough in that defense to pull out all the stops and to really bring it against.
What does that mean? They're pulling out all the stops on defense.
Using the best weapons on defense, making sure to.
Now they're not. They're playing their best defenders.
Well, you also got to remember there's 2 freshman linebackers.
Yep.
That really can make a big impact if they really want to pull them out.
Oh, they're saving their true freshmen. They're not getting them reps now so that they can save their true freshmen. That is the first time in the history of college football that would be a strategy, to save your freshmen, your true freshmen, to then launch them as weapons against the best teams on the schedule.
And they did it again. They did it with Andy Ketzenwehr back in 1996.
Did they really?
Mm-hmm. And then they saved Spielman as well.
They saved them?
They saved them for the games that when they were having a bad situation, or if there was a team they really needed to make a big impact against, that's when they really had to say, all right, get out there and go do your thing.
You're telling me that Andy Katzenmoyer and Chris Spielman did not play against the weaker opponents at the beginning of the season?
No, because most of the time I did this and I studied this film. All right. So you better just understand, I study these films, and I still watch old Ohio State film on even some of the greatest linebackers to play.
Okay. I
So
watched games live, but go right ahead.
So when they pull out Garrett Stover and Peyton Pierce against both Oregon, Penn State, Michigan, the 3 games right there with those 2 guys can make a huge impact, especially being true freshmen and being able to bring more of a heavier blow to especially their tight ends, or to be able to rush past the offensive line easier. That's your biggest, advantage, is having those true freshmen be able to get some work in. Because the juniors and seniors and sophomores are always out there.
What might be a more accurate statement would be that teams hold back playing true freshmen. I'll take Will Johnson of Michigan for an example in his freshman season in 2022. By the end of the season, he was one of the best cornerbacks in the country. He didn't play much early, not because they were saving him as some secret weapon, but he was learning the defense.
I see what you mean on that, but like I said, both my point and your point could go either way.
Okay. All right. All right, Caden. Anything else?
And just for the USC folks on here, we'll see you guys soon. And go Bucks. And USC sucks, because y'all know you can't hang with the big dogs of the Big Ten, which is Ohio State. And to all the Michigan fans, we'll see you November 30th for a real butt whipping. Oregon fans, we'll see you soon next week for a big old 50-point butt whipping. And to all the Happy Valley fans, you already know it's a 50-point whipping coming your way. Just letting you know.
Thanks for stopping by, Caden.
And Mark, tell Tim and Matt I said we'll see them boys sooner than later, because I guarantee you, when they come to play Ohio State, it's going to be a 50-point shutout to blowout, and I guarantee it that. I'll put my money where my mouth is.
It sounds like you already said that to them, so I would not need to say that to them, nor would I say that to them. But thanks for the call, Caden. I saw Caden. I saw the call come up, and I did a check. I did a bit of a internal check. All right. Keep it cordial. Let him talk. Let him spew some ridiculous things, which that was just a slim, slight little portion compared to his previous 5 or 6 calls. But we do appreciate Caden joining our show here recently at the Voice of College Football. All right, let's get to our next call. We've got our buddy Michael on the line. Michael, what's going on tonight?
Really, Mark? Caden thinks there's going to be 3 straight blowouts of 49 points apiece? Really?
Yeah, they're going to win 3 consecutive games against those 3 teams by at least 49 points.
Mark, you're an Ohio State fan. I'm not an Ohio State fan. I picked originally, before the season started, I said this was going to be a loss for Ohio State next Saturday in Austin Stadium. It's not going to be a 49-point. None of the games are going to be 49-point blowout. Caden, wake up. It's not going to happen.
I would like to know the last time anybody beat anyone in the Big Ten by 49 points that was one of the top teams in the conference.
What was it? 48-7 last year in West Lafayette for Ohio State, Purdue? And that was a late touchdown?
Were you listening to me, Michael? I said the last time the 2 teams in the Big Ten, 2 of the top teams in the Big Ten played a 49-point game. Somebody dig that up for me. When is the last time that happened that you would take, let's say, 2 top 10 teams in the Big Ten and the final score was a 49-point spread? The closest I can come up with is Penn State beat Ohio State by 49 in 1994.
When
That Ohio
Michigan and
State
Ohio
team wasn't that good. They did finish like 13th in the country.
when Michigan and Ohio State close to it a couple years ago. But it was
49 points?
Yeah, at one point
No.
before Michigan scored a couple late touchdowns, because I thought they won the game like 62-39.
Oh, yeah, that's a 23-point game.
But I thought at one point it was like a 6-touchdown lead. But I don't know.
No.
All right.
No.
I do got a question for you. I see the YouTube short you had on today, stuff like that, asking about a team who has the worst record, had a Super Bowl MVP, third in the career receptions. The California Golden Bears.
Okay. It's been a couple months since I shot that, so I don't exactly remember what statistics or facts I used. Hang on, Michael.
Okay. All right.
I believe I said that they have produced, this particular school has produced, yes, a Super Bowl MVP,
Yeah.
has produced 3 Hall of Fame college football coaches, 3 Hall of Fame college football coaches that I can think of. What else did I throw out there? There's a few others.
The third all-time leading receiver in the NFL, and a 4-time linebacker who won 4 Super Bowls.
Yes, all of those things. Think about this, folks. Here's a trivia question for you. I threw this on a short. Thanks for bringing this up, Michael, because I had fun producing this little short, and I would love to do these every day if I could think of similar anecdotes to let's say highlight Purdue one day and come up with not 4 obvious like this school produced a quarterback who won a Super Bowl for the New Orleans Saints, not so obvious facts about a particular school and throw those out every day. Those would be fun. Maybe I could do a different school every day. But anyway, here's what Michael's bringing out, folks. So this particular school produced a Super Bowl MVP, produced how did I phrase it, Michael? Top 3 all-time pass receiver?
Yep. In the NFL.
I think that's actually as a tight end. But anyway.
Yeah, as a tight end, yeah. But
yes, okay.
30 receptions.
Top 3 receiver in the history of height and the NFL. As a tight end, 3 Hall of Fame coaches, a Super Bowl MVP, and a 4-time Super Bowl champion as a player. What school is that? And you are saying, Michael, who?
Cal Golden Bears.
No. Anyone in the chat?
Okay. Because see, the reason why I said Super Bowl winning MVP quarterback, because Aaron Rodgers.
I didn't say it was a quarterback, but go ahead.
Oh, well, Super Bowl MVP.
Yep.
Tony Gonzalez went to Cal, and he's the 3rd leading receiver in the history of the NFL with catches. And I can't remember I tried to look it up earlier. I couldn't find the linebacker. And the coaches I couldn't even find.
Okay. I want some guesses from the chat before we unveil the answer. But one more time, folks. This school produced a Super Bowl MVP, 3 college football Hall of Fame coaches, a player who won 4 Super Bowls, and one of the highest pass catching tight ends in the history of the NFL. It is not Cal. And they also, I believe, I verified this, have the worst winning percentage in college football history. That's pretty remarkable when you think about all those accomplishments and then the worst. And they have one of the top 5 kickoff and punt returners in terms of yardage and touchdowns in the history of the NFL.
Oh, why you figure it out, Mark? I was just looking up in the stream and stuff like that. There was a couple times you said 2 top 10 teams and stuff like that as far as like blowouts. Well, back in the 2014 Big Ten Championship, Ohio State did shut out Wisconsin 59-0.
There you go. Thank you, Michael. Good job.
And then
59-0. Yes.
And also there was another time where a couple years ago where Michigan State was ranked in the top 5, I think. and got whacked by Ohio State 56-7.
That's a good point. There's another one. Yes, 56-7, CJ Stroud and company, 2021. And that Michigan State team finished in the top 10. Wisconsin, I believe, was number 13, just being technical. But I wasn't necessarily just looking for a top 10 team, but a really good team close to the top 10. Yes, very well. Very good. Yeah, so Ohio State has done that twice in the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm. But no, I was just wondering stuff like that. Because when you said that, the first thing, I looked it up, and the first few things reminded me was Aaron Rodgers and Tony Gonzalez.
Oh, that's a good guess.
Oh, wow. 4th and 20, and Syracuse and UNLV gives them a roughing the passion penalty, and they got it the ball to the 12-yard line. 41-38 in overtime.
31?
41-38.
41-38. Okay, well, I did take Syracuse in the 6.5 points. But, man, yeah, that's a bailout. And for anybody that's looking for a backdoor cover tonight, my goodness, Oregon was a 23-point favorite against Michigan State, and they give up 10 points late to win 31-10, if anyone cares about such things out there.
Mm-hmm. But I got to ask you this. Have you ever seen a block punt literally go that far backwards before it get recovered in the end zone from midfield before?
I don't know. That was pretty remarkable. And then if you saw the previous, did not turn out to be a block punt, but the guy was so close to the punter that the punter couldn't even try to kick the ball. And then he just got thrown down. So they basically had 2 blocked punts. But yeah, that ball kicked way back into the end zone.
Yeah. It reminded me.
That's been a fun game to watch. I've enjoyed watching Syracuse and Vegas tonight.
Yeah, and that first one reminded me of the Colts in Tennessee last year in Nashville, where the punter didn't even get a chance to get the ball off. And as soon as he tried to get the ball off, and fortunately, the bad thing is he actually tore his ACL. The punter tore his ACL. That's how bad the Colts smashed him. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying. So, game for you tomorrow.
Yes.
Is what? What are you looking for?
Game 3? I'm sorry, I misheard you.
What's on your schedule for tomorrow?
Okay, well, let's get to the schedule here, and my apologies to you and the rest of the audience, because when you're running a network, you constantly have people calling and texting, and I've got to send a code to our Florida State host for tomorrow.
Okay.
Give me 2 seconds. I don't see the code. He's going to have to resend it. Okay, let's get to the schedule here.
All right.
Keep me updated on Syracuse and Vegas.
I will do that.
I appreciate it, Michael.
No, not bad. But no, I'm surprised. I thought with Cal and stuff like that I really thought it was Cal because of the first 2 clues you gave away. But I'm going to have to do some more research. But the question is, are you going to reveal it before the end of the show? Are you going to make me dig it up?
Sure, I can do that. I would like to see some people guess. Well, we got...
Yeah.
Okay, somebody did get it. Somebody got it. Somebody got it in the chat. All right, let's look at our schedule for tomorrow. Now, if you're just talking about name brands, like we just said, it's a random year in college football history, and you were going to watch a game at noon, I would say Penn State and UCLA. But we know UCLA is horrible. So I will not start out watching that game. I will watch Texas A&M and Missouri for sure at noon. Mm-hmm. And then I'm kind of inclined to watch Louisville and SMU.
Yeah.
I would like to check out your boys tomorrow at noon. So if we get some kind of separation on one of those 2 games, maybe I'll opt for Wisconsin and Purdue, because I got to expect Penn State's going to have a 3-touchdown lead at halftime.
Yeah, which game you think I have a feeling both those games on ABC and ESPN is going to be a good one. But I see someone, was the correct answer Army?
No.
Okay. Just was wondering stuff like that, because I know that they had stuff like that. So unless it happened, because I know Tony Gonzalez is a 3rd leading receiver, even though he was a tight end and stuff. But
okay, is that exactly how I phrased it?
Yes.
Whatever I phrased was correct. It was accurate. And it obviously was not Tony Gonzalez, because he went to Cal.
Yeah.
All right.
It's Aaron
So
Rodgers.
that-
In the game, pending review, we got an upset in Las Vegas.
an upset, meaning
Yeah.
Syracuse won.
Yeah, the play's under review right now, though.
Yeah, I picked Syracuse.
Oh, did you?
I did.
Hmm.
So somebody's going to laugh at me in the chat when I say this, but I would not mind watching either Boston College, Virginia, or Pitt, North Carolina. I think both of those games are going to be close games and just interesting games. I would watch either one of those games. Now, I won't because I don't have enough eyeballs to watch those two games, but I would.
Yeah. Not bad. No, I was just wondering. Yep, it's over 44-41.
Very nice.
Yep.
Syracuse is 4-1, and UNLV has lost its first game and will tumble out of the top 10.
Your top 10?
Yes.
Okay.
The only one we cite here. Air Force and Navy. That's on CBS.
Yeah, that game might take 25 minutes to play tomorrow.
It just might. Yeah.
Because it's like run left, run right, run in the middle and stuff like that. So, not bad. So
I would guess that if we looked at the passing stats for those two teams, you would be slightly surprised.
Yeah, they better passing this year than they've been in the past and stuff.
I believe so. Let's see. Navy's quarterback has thrown for over 600 yards. He's at 68% passing.
Wow.
7 touchdowns, 1 pick. How about that?
That's surprising. And he's also the leading rusher.
Well,
go figure.
Yes, he is. But I didn't expect it to be that good, but I knew that Navy could throw the ball.
Yeah. Now, I got to ask you this. With UNLV losing tonight, that sets up pretty much the de facto Mountain West Championship. Is it next week or 2 weeks when they go to Boise State?
I don't know the schedule. I don't know when they go to Boise State.
I'm just wondering stuff like that because I know it's coming up and stuff. So, not bad. I'm trying to think. Who was it this week that they was trying to get into the Pac-12 and they got rejected?
Got rejected? Well, UNLV decided to stay in the Mountain West.
Oh, okay. Wonder why that is for.
UTEP is leaving for the PAC conference.
Mm-hmm. Not bad. No, I was just wondering stuff like that. Now, I probably deep down now, thinking about it, I probably know the answer, and I'm going to shoot myself in the foot for not literally and stuff like that. So the 3:30 games. Oh, speaking of the new kick or the Bama didn't play at 4:15 tomorrow, right?
Who?
Alabama Vanderbilt.
Bama Vandy at 4:15 tomorrow. Yes.
All right. Bama's going to win the game, but do you think they might come out a little bit flat to start the game before they wake up?
Yeah, sure. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, they'll come out and win the game. Yeah, they could be a little bit flat, but I hate to try to predict when teams are going to come out flat and not give the other team any credit. Vandy is only a 23-point underdog. This game is usually in the 45-point range.
Mm-hmm.
And so Vandy's a much improved team. So I don't want to discredit anything Vandy's going to do tomorrow if they give Bama a decent game. I'm going to guess that Bama wins this game by that close to 23-point spread. But if I had to lean one way, I'd probably go on the high end. And that reminds me, I've got to make my picks tonight.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Michael. Appreciate you being here.
Mark, thanks, man. And please forgive me for messing up.
Messing up what? What did you mess up, Michael?
The answer, because I really thought it was Cal. Now you're going to make me do some more research.
Do some more research. I will attempt this week to produce another short with another mystery school.
Those are fun, by the way. All right, man. Take care.
Thank you, Michael.
Yep, see ya.
Those would be fun. When I did that one, I intended on doing one per day. And now that you've seen my plan unveil, I've done one in 3 months. But yes, this particular school has produced 3 Hall of Fame head coaches, a 4-time Super Bowl winner, a Super Bowl MVP, and one of the 3 highest most prolific tight ends in the history of the NFL. And they have the worst winning percentage in college football history. Who is it? Welcome to the Voice of College Football, Darrell. What's going on?
Oh, nothing much. I saw a great game between UNLV and Syracuse, the Fruit.
I know.
Syracuse was the Power 5 team, and they outmuscled and out-physicaled UNLV and won the football game.
Despite 2 blocked punts.
Right. Well, it just shows you, Mark, the gap between the Power 5 and the G5. I mean, Syracuse is not a good football team. They're probably a 6-6, 5-7, 7-5 type football team.
Yep.
And they just outmuscled literally on the final play of the game. On I think 1st and goal, 2nd and goal, they just run it. And the UNLV defender meets them at the 1-yard line, and the Syracuse player just kept running forward and got into the end zone. That just, to me, summarizes the complete difference between the Power 5 and the G5. The G5 doesn't need a playoff spot. They're going to get absolutely smoked, yada, yada, yada. What do you think, Mark?
Well, I think that when we were breaking down the conferences a couple of weeks ago and we went through all the various metrics and results, where we stand right now is that UNLV has won 2 games against Kansas and Houston, and Georgia State beat Vanderbilt, and Mississippi State lost to Toledo. Those are the 4 group of 5 wins. I don't think I'm missing any others. The Big Ten has not lost to a group of 5 team, and the ACC, well, no. North Carolina lost to James Madison. So there's 5. I think somebody in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong, if I've missed any of the group of 5 wins against the Power 5. 5 wins against the likes of North Carolina, Vandy, Houston, Kansas, and somebody else I missed. So Mississippi State. The Power 5 has won something like 65 or 70 games against the group of 5. So yes, it's not to the point that I remember us discussing this around postseason play last year, that the 5 conference winners in the group of 5 all lost their bowl games against power conference opponents, and the aggregate score was pretty ugly against 6-6 teams in the Power 5.
Right. And when I watched Boston College run all over Tulane, I knew it was just an athleticism gap between the two. But I want to give, if there's one UNLV fan in the chat, I guess I'll give him some hope. How much does this game really matter to UNLV? I mean, if they go 11-1 in the Mountain West, beat Boise State, they've got 2 wins against Power 5 teams. I still believe they're going to be selected as that G5 team. What do you think?
Well, if they do all that, now this win tonight would have given them a little bit more leeway to lose a game or 2 or whatever the case might be. Yeah, it's not critical, but it would have helped them.
Right. Well, my thinking is odds are, based on the way the G5 is looking, it's going to be between the winner of Boise State and UNLV as the best G5 team. Now, I don't know if they're going to have the best resume. I mean, Army and Navy could be 11-1 each or 10-1 each before they get selected by the playoff committee, because the American Conference, they've looked like they've completely outclassed everybody else in the conference. So they could be other contenders. But for me, who is the best power-rated G5 team is going to come down to that UNLV and Boise State game.
Well, that's I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm not sure if you saw UNLV Fresno State. My goodness, Mark. I know Fresno State's probably not where they used to be, but they're still a decent football team, and UNLV just whooped them by 45 points.
Yeah, so the committee last year, though, they bypassed the teams that were clearly the better teams out of the group of 5 to grab a James Madison team that was undefeated. So I don't know if they're going to take that approach again this year, if Army or Navy, should one of them go undefeated, although I believe they both play Notre Dame.
That is correct.
Yeah. So maybe James Madison. So last year, obviously, Liberty was the selection and should not have been, in my opinion, when SMU had an undefeated record against a much better schedule of group of 5 teams and lost their only 2 games against Power 5 teams. And Liberty got selected. And of course, they got steamrolled by Oregon.
Right. I mean, I agree with you, but Mark, I mean, we're just kind of arguing semantics. It would have been the same result for Oregon, regardless of who they picked between Liberty, SMU. And that's probably the same between UNLV, Boise State, Army, and whoever. I mean, you can combine all those G5 teams, in Oregon last year probably would have still been favored and would easily beat them. It's just a completely different class of football. And the quicker we all realize that as college football nation, the better the sport's going to be. Because if the quickest way to delegitimize the playoffs is saying an 8-9 game is equal value to a 5-12 game.
And what's ironic about all of it is at the same time that we have now given the group of 5 an automatic selection is at the same time in which the group of 5 has been diminished by the Power 5 taking its best teams.
Right, and those same G5, now P5 teams aren't even competitive against the Power 5 in the worst league out of the Power 5 in the Big 12.
Yes, they went 8-28 in the Big 12 last year.
Right, and they're not on track to do better this year. I mean, I know Houston beat TCU tonight, which was surprising because Houston, I thought, was the worst Big 12 team. But do you know what happened in that game? Because that surprised me that Houston won by 15 points.
Especially since Houston's starting quarterback Donovan Smith did not play in the game. I saw very little of the game, and it was just typical Big 12 garbage football to a certain extent. Sorry to offend some Big 12 fans, but the bottom of that league is just, shoot, TCU gave up 66 points to SMU a couple weekends ago. So yeah, they're bad football teams. It was probably a fairly entertaining game. I don't know. I just didn't see much of it. No, Houston went out to a 17-zip lead, won by 11. Yeah, just bad football teams. I don't know what happened. But again, Houston had to play a inexperienced quarterback and still won the game by 2 scores. I believe we've got Corey stepping in, wanting to confront you about something, DeReal.
That's fine. You can bring him on.
Corey, what's going on tonight?
I love how I get Mark to break the rules. This is great.
Yeah,
you have special privileges, Corey.
I didn't have to be added on with Darrell. I would have been fine talking after he was off. Darrell, I have an issue with your statement there a second ago. I'm assuming you watched the UNLV Syracuse game. I mean, I'm trying to give you the benefit of the doubt on that.
I mean, I watched most of it. I can't say I was watching every single play because I was flipping between that game and the Oregon-Michigan State game because better football was played out there. Now, more competitive football was played in Las Vegas, but what do you want to ask?
Yeah, better football was played by one team in Eugene. But to say that last play of the game between UNLV and Syracuse sums up the difference between G5 football and P4 football, I think is a little unfair, given what you outlined earlier, Mark, with what UNLV has done against the Power 5. And this was an overtime game. Like, this wasn't like, wow, like that one play sums up how big of a difference. UNLV has been competitive and has come out on the winning side of the majority of its encounters with Power 5 teams this year. Now, they have not played. We know now Kansas is not as good as we initially thought. And, I think the ACC, you always say the Big 12 is a fun conference, Mark. I think the ACC is the most fun, just because there's a lot of teams at the top that, with the exceptions, obviously the race, we expect the race to end between Clemson and Miami, but there's a lot of intriguing games. I'm intrigued by SMU, Louisville tomorrow. But I didn't like that statement you made, Darrell, because to me that play was a great football play by a running back who, by the way, if you had seen, and maybe you did, but Syracuse had that was a fourth down 7 at the end of regulation. And that same running back came on a sweep play and got jacked by a UNLV defender, and he just bounced off of him and got like 7 extra yards for the first down. Had he went down, and it was a big hit he took, 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, would have ended the game. The game's over at that point. That dude is tough. And actually, when he made that play at the end of regulation, I looked him up. I'm like, man, I wonder where. I'm always curious. I don't know if other people do this, Mark, but I like to look up people's recruiting pages, just random games that I'm watching. And of course, this kid's a 3-star and, had some decent offers. I like to look at it from an Iowa perspective. Hey, was Iowa ever interested in this kid? But man, that dude's a man. And Syracuse has some dudes. Like, let me just say this right now. They're not a top 25 team, I don't think, but they got some good skill guys. And they're asking Kyle McCord. They're asking Kyle McCord to throw. What did he throw? Like 63 passes today. I think that's insane. So, anyways, it was a fun game to watch. I'll agree with you on that, Darrell. But those two teams are very evenly matched, and if they play 100 times, they probably split 50-50.
But Darrell's point was that UNLV is a probable selection to the college football playoff, and Syracuse is just in the myriad of 6-6 teams across America.
Well, I don't know that Syracuse. We'll see. I don't know that Syracuse is a 6-6 team. I think they could maybe hit 8 wins in that conference with the way they throw the football and with a quarterback like Kyle McCord. I wanted to ask you that question, Mark. I don't know if you want to do that now because I know you don't like the trio of people on your show at the same time. But I wanted to ask you, as I was watching Kyle McCord play, can you remind me again why Ohio State kind of pushed him out? Just explain that to me. Because I'm confused because I watched him and he wasn't perfect today. But who's going to be perfect when you're throwing the ball 60 sometimes? He's really good. And obviously he is really good. He is really good. And I mean, he was a much higher recruit than Will Howard was at a high school. Now, you and I both know the development post high school is just as important when we're talking about big boy football. But I don't think, I've looked at stats. I've watched these guys play. I looked at stats from Kyle McCord last year compared to what we've seen of Will Howard this year. I don't think Will Howard's any better, but you tell me you watch a lot more Buckeye football than I do.
Would Iowa have been pushing Kyle McCord out the door after he threw 26 touchdowns and 6 picks? Anyway,
I guess it's if they had been bringing in Dylan Gabriel, that'd be different, right? Will Howard is a good get from Kansas State. I'd have been doing backward somersaults had Iowa landed Will Howard. But I'm just saying those two guys, and they're kind of similar in how they play, right? Like in a sense.
Will Howard's a runner. Well, he's got the capability to run. He's not.
Yeah, I get Will Howard's a little bit more.
Yeah, he's a mobile quarterback. My point on the Will Howard Kyle McCord comparison, the entire offseason has been two major points to any Ohio State fans in particular that would be like, well, Will Howard's going to have a better season than Kyle McCord did last year. Well, he should. He's been a starting quarterback in big-time college football for 2.5 years. When Kyle McCord started his first game at Ohio State last season, he had 0 experience. None. And number 2, Will Howard it is a advantage when it's 3rd and 4 and you drop back to pass and you can see a gap in the pass rush and you can just take off and pick up an easy first down, as opposed to Kyle McCord's typically, although he did actually run for a first down in this game that was fairly impressive, has eluded the rush and rush for a first down and a lot more than that. Generally, he's looking to thread a needle somewhere downfield while a rush is closing in on him. He's not going to run for a first down. He just doesn't do that. And that also might have been Ryan Day's style of coaching because he wants his quarterbacks to throw and not run. But it was more about the comparison of Justin Fields and CJ Stroud being first round NFL picks. And suddenly you're Kyle McCord and you're being compared to those kind of guys. And you're being blamed for everything that went wrong last year when the offensive line wasn't bad, but it was not Ohio State standard, national championship standard offensive line play.
Okay, then why aren't they playing Julian Sayin or the other kid? Not Devin Brown. Who's the other quarterback?
Well, yeah, they got Julian Sayin. They've got the lefty with a funny name. Good Lord.
The more true
name for 6 months.
The guy that's closer comparison to Fields, or he's more
Devin
mobile,
Brown,
correct?
Lincoln Keen Holtz, Julian Sayin, and the fourth guy.
Keen Holtz.
Who's the lefty? Somebody in the chat. The left-handed quarterback for Ohio State, 5-star.
I forgot all about Keen Holtz.
He's got a catchy name.
Yep.
Goodness gracious. Anyway, they knew that. Well, their aspirations are the same every year, but they knew that they were kind of gunning for it this year, and they wanted an experienced quarterback.
Well, then Aaron Nolan.
Thank you.
Yeah, Aaron Nolan. So why not play? That's I guess what I'm saying is if the reason. Well, yeah, I don't know. To me, what you just said, there's a little bit of contradictory nature to what you just said, because you're talking about, well, expectation has been guys like Fields and Stroud, and I know you and I have debated Stroud a little bit, and his obviously there's no debating his athleticism. He didn't run a lot in that system, but if they don't want a guy who runs anyways, then I still don't understand why you would push Kyle McCord out when he gave you a really productive year in basically year one, to bring in a guy who's been productive. But to me, they're just very similar resumes, except Kyle McCord has more of a future ahead of him, and we always talk about Hayden Fry, and he always would play the younger guy because he had more room for improvement and a longer future. And that's like Ohio State kind of did the opposite by bringing in Will Howard instead, unless there was different plans and those plans were altered.
What you are bringing to the table is not wrong. Kyle McCord, and I may be proven wrong, is a better NFL prospect, and it's not even that close versus Will Howard.
Yeah,
Kyle McCord's going to be an NFL quarterback. Will Howard probably will be holding a clipboard for somebody.
And 90%. Julian Sayin weighs 150 pounds.
He's exaggerating, but that's kind of the point. Julian Sayin's nowhere near ready to play big-time college football. Yeah, he's a little guy that has to develop.
Sure,
but he's a 5-star. And
yeah, the reason I brought him up is because you were talking about the comparisons to more mobile, athletic guys. But yeah,
to your point, Corey, if I can cut you off, just to extend on your point, I think where you're headed is, yes, Kyle McCord, after 1 year of starting, they could have worked with him this entire offseason with Chip Kelly, Ryan Day, and their quarterback development history. I don't know.
Well, they kind of pushed it. The commonality consensus here is he was pushed out before Chip Kelly was ever even
yes
on the radar, right?
Absolutely.
So, which makes even less sense, because you would think I don't know, to make those types of decisions before you have a coordinator in place. Because remind me when what's his face left, the OC, previous OC, O'Brien. So when did O'Brien leave?
He took the Boston College job. That was sometime probably in February. It was before spring practice.
Okay, so I'm just trying to figure out what's the timeline there. How does that match up with when McCord entered the transfer portal?
Well, Corey, a lot of people in the chat are saying Kyle McCord wanted the starting job guaranteed, and Ryan Day and them didn't give that guarantee to him, so he wanted a place where he can get the starting job guaranteed.
That's a good
And-
reminder. Yes,
So
I
if that's
forgot
what
about that
happened,
point. McCord
if
was
that-
in the portal immediately. He was at the Syracuse bowl game.
okay, so if
Standing
that's
on
what
the side.
happened, then really that's totally different than what my understanding of the situation and what I'd heard talked about for a long time. And I'm no Buckeye fan, so I probably would have been more informed if I had been. But like that was my understanding for all this time, was that Ohio State kind of just said, hey, you know, thanks, but go find better pastures. So if that's actually what happened and he wasn't guaranteed the job, et cetera, how can you possibly think any Ohio State quarterback? I mean, if Quinn Ewers wasn't able to win the job there, how can you expect to be guaranteed a job? Especially
Corey, have
with
you
a
heard of this thing
loaded
called an
room.
ego?
Well, yeah, I get it, but like, then don't go to Ohio State. Go to Syracuse out of high school.
Well, some people
go
just
to-
believe they're better than what they are, and I believe that's what Kyle McCord fall under. I mean, he's a good quarterback. He's not an elite quarterback. He's not even close to Quinn Ewers.
Well,
So
he'd be the best option at Ohio State this year. I guess my whole point in this. He'd probably have won that job, is what I'm saying.
maybe, I don't know. Will Howard's pretty good. I mean, they're pretty both
But
even.
would they have even brought Will Howard in?
No,
That's
what
they
I'm
would
trying
have
to
say.
they would have a quarterback room with like six
That's
dudes.
what I'm saying. I'm saying like that to me, what everybody's saying in the chat, and there may be substance to that. I don't know if are they repeating this from insiders, but to me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you look at the quarterback room. You're talking about these guys who aren't ready, and Julian Sand, who's undersized and a true freshman. Who would he have looked at and said, "Whoa, this guy's a threat"? Who would have been the threat?
I would like to do a poll in the chat. 1 for McCord, 2 for Will Howard. Who should
Okay,
be the starting quarterback?
I would also like to address the chat in this way, because a number of people are getting on me for not bringing that fact to life. And once it was, I'm remembering, yes, that I don't know that was ever confirmed, but that it's generally reasoned, for whatever reason, that Kyle McCord did demand to be guaranteed the starting quarterback job this season at Ohio State. And the reason that I didn't bring that up is because I simply forgot about it. So pardon me, chat. I talk about 50 different teams every day, and I forgot about something that happened 7 months ago.
So let me get this straight. Let me get this straight then. He wanted to be guaranteed that he would retain the job over the likes of Devin Brown, Lincoln Keenholz, and Aaron Noland. Is
and
that
probably
basically
that
what
they
we're
wouldn't
saying?
bring in a transfer quarterback to compete with him.
Who else would they have brought in? They've got 4 scholarship guys. How many scholarship quarterbacks does Ohio State retain?
You're right about that. But I would think that if Kyle McCord would have said, yes, I will stay and compete for this job, that his competition would have generally been Devin Brown. The guy that he beat out for the starting job the season before.
Yeah, and who apparently hasn't really sniffed the starting job here. I mean, I know he's gotten some snaps here and there, but I just think that sounds like there's more to the story. I know that we all like to assume it's one thing or another, but
It's interesting based on the chat response. It seems pretty split down the middle between McCord and Will Howard of who's the better quarterback. So,
Uncle Rico, we appreciate your contribution. He says, explain why Kyle McCord is at Syracuse as opposed to Oregon, Notre Dame, Florida State, or Miami. If he was so amazing, why did not anyone?
Hold on just a second. Can we just I know everybody assumes everybody in this sport is all about money and being at a blue blood. The kid is from the Northeast. So let's just say that, when you start bringing up teams like Oregon and Florida State and Miami, he is from the Northeast. So maybe he wanted a Power 5 opportunity in the Northeast. That's a possibility. Whether Mr. Rico wants to agree with that or, give that a possibility of being true, he is from that area of the country. I don't know how far Syracuse is from his hometown. Isn't he from Pennsylvania, Mark?
He's from Philadelphia, outside of Philadelphia.
He's from Philly.
So it's probably like 2.5 or 3 hours, something like that.
Maybe that's a factor. I mean, there are people in this world still, that maybe want their parents to be able to come. And I mean, I don't know. Hey, one thing you said earlier, I want to give you credit on, Mark, and normally I don't defer back to recruiting rankings, especially as an Iowa guy, but he talked about McCord probably being a better NFL prospect. Let me defer back to recruiting for a second. And in spite of obviously a nice land by Kansas State, maybe an overlook by some schools and Will Howard, there is no comparison between those two guys as it relates to recruiting evaluations at a high school. So that we're talking about NFL prospects, that would indicate what you said, that I'm guessing Kyle McCord is probably a better NFL prospect. Just looking back at their what the quote unquote experts were saying at coming out of high school.
And
Hey,
Corey,
Mark,
the
can you pull up
analyst,
Uncle Rico's latest chat? I think it'll
hang
rile
on
up
just a
Corey.
second. And the analyst doing the game had a good point. And one of the reasons why they relied on McCord so much tonight, and he had to throw 63 passes, was they couldn't pick up 3rd and 3s running the football. So McCord was throwing, and they said, and the analyst knew exactly what he was talking about when he said this. This is a guy that can routinely throw a ball in a tight little window on a 3rd and 3, and that's going to be more effective for this team than running the football. So he's got to pick up 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 3s, throwing dart little passes where guys are draped all over receivers because he can throw a football. Now, is his decision making? Now, I saw him play Stanford earlier this season, and they lost that game. And he had to throw 55 passes because the entire offense was on his shoulders. And he did throw 2 pretty bad picks, but he did throw the ball 55 times. And it's not just throwing the ball 55 times. It's when the defense knows that you are the only thing that can beat them, and they don't have a running game that's going to beat them. And that's what happened. He threw 2 bad picks, but man, when he throws it well, which is most of the time, he can throw a football. He's a better passer of the football than Will Howard is.
And high volume, his stats, though, remain really efficient and really good. And UNLV, there were a couple of plays. It wasn't just that last one of the game. There was an interception. Was it? I believe it was earlier the same drive in overtime. There were a couple near interceptions from McCord in this game on questionable throws that, had they been picked, just slipped through a defender's hands, game would have been over.
Uncle Rico said, so DJU was the number 1 rated quarterback in his class. So what? Well, Justin Fields was the number 1 rated quarterback in his class, and Trevor Lawrence was the number 1 rated quarterback in his class, and Bryce Young was the number 1 rated quarterback in his class. They're usually pretty accurate. Yes, you can come up, and I could go further down the line.
Yeah. So, I didn't want to ignite a huge debate, but I just was honestly curious, because I'm not in, I'm an average college football fan as it relates to Ohio State and other schools. So I really was curious in that situation. I just have a hard time believing that Kyle McCord would have been, that even he would have felt threatened by the guys behind him and an incoming freshman after the season he had, and knowing that, hey, this quarterback room is full unless someone leaves, and no one left but him, which is why they brought in Will Howard. Let me just say this too real quick, and I'll get off the line. I've been taking up too much of Darrell his time, but
Well, Corey, I was wanting to debate you about the UNLV Syracuse thing, but you went off in this 10, 15-minute tangent about Kyle McCord versus Will Howard.
The next time I have Zach Smith on, I'll ask him about the Kyle McCord situation.
I think it's pretty even between the two. I think it's a legitimate debate. You can argue for both of them, but my point to Corey is, if UNLV is struggling to beat Syracuse, then why on earth should they even have a better chance of making a playoff than a team like Iowa, Wisconsin, Louisville, SMU, those type of teams?
Before you go, Corey, before you respond, Darrell, make a projection on if UNLV does make the playoff as a 12 seed, who are the possible candidates to play them in the 5-12 game?
Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Clemson, Miami. That's the full range of possibilities.
Yeah.
So
So they're
let me
not going to
just-
play Syracuse.
Let me just remind you of this drill. So you asked me would UNLV ever be more deserving over an Iowa or Wisconsin? I know Wisconsin's not having a good year, but typically they're in that range, that fringe area, I guess. So can we just remember that these power conferences, specifically SEC, Big Ten, are going to get 3 to 4 teams in every year. So, I don't think an Iowa, and I'm an Iowa guy, I don't think an Iowa-Syracuse game is a lopsided game. I think it's a close game, regardless of where it's played. I think Iowa would be a
That's
really
not my point. You're misdirecting my point. My point is you're not playing even an Iowa type team. You're playing one of the best 3 or 4 teams in the country, often the number 2 team in the country as the 12th seed.
You're probably playing the number 3 team in the country.
Fair.
We're talking about who. What are you talking? We're talking about who is deserving to get a berth. That's what we're
Right.
talking about here.
And why would a team that is the 50th, the 60th best team in the country deserve a berth?
Did he just mute himself, or what happened?
No, I just asked you a question. Why does the
You
50th,
cut
the
off.
60th best team in the country deserve a berth in the playoffs?
Well, first of all, I don't know that they are the 50th or 60th best team. I just got done telling you that if Iowa played Syracuse on a neutral field right now, my guess is it would be close. I would probably take Iowa, but it'd be close. And guess what? UNLV just played Syracuse tonight, and it was close. It went to overtime. That's my point. I don't think UNLV is probably 50th or 60th best team. And if they are, then Iowa's probably in the 40s, and I don't think Iowa is. We don't know. We're just speculating on what would happen in that game. But I'm just saying,
Part
I
of
think
that's
those two,
because of the way Iowa plays. Like I
No,
think that
no,
you and I would
okay.
both be. I think you and I would both be confident that Iowa would win, but it may not be the most dominant win
against Syracuse.
against Syracuse. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe.
and it would be a fascinating game because of the differing styles, for one thing.
Yeah, I saw you were getting goosebumps just me talking about that because you loved hearing about those unorthodox types. So you'd love to see Syracuse and Iowa in a bowl game, wouldn't you, Mark?
Yes, absolutely.
Hey, and let me just say this. Can I just?
I
real
wish
quickly-
USC and Iowa were playing in the regular season. If I could have one game in the Big Ten, it would be USC and Iowa.
Why is this is maybe a dumb question, but ACC Mountain West? Why was this game taking place this week in Week 6? Just a late non-conference game.
Yeah.
I think it's because of Notre Dame, and there's an odd team every single week because of them.
Well,
Okay.
they also have an odd number of teams now. They have
That's
17.
true as well.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, we can have it. I understand we're coming from slightly different perspectives. I'm probably a little higher than some people are in Syracuse. Drill, you're probably a little lower. Like I said earlier, I think the ACC as a whole, and I know where this debate really started about UNLV. I'm just saying I've seen UNLV beat 2 Power 5 teams. I like the idea of.
Oh, hold on. I got to challenge that point. I'm sorry. You've been going on I got to challenge that point. They beat Houston and some other terrible Power 5
Well,
team. It's
beat-
not like
Yes, they beat the only Power 5 teams in the schedule, and preseason we thought Kansas was going to be pretty darn good.
Well, I
proven to
don't
be
care about
crap.
preseason. We're 6 weeks into the season, and Kansas is one of the worst teams in the Power 4. And so is Houston. They're both
Yeah.
terrible teams. They're both probably not going to make a bowl game. If in Minnesota went out there and beat Houston, that would be considered a nice win for Minnesota, but nobody would bat an eye.
I like the idea of a rewarding group of 5 teams that go out and schedule and beat / compete with
Yeah.
Power 4 teams. Sometimes they
did.
don't pan out. Sometimes the Kansas the scheduling of Kansas doesn't pan out the way you wanted to. Houston's been a good program. They're not good this year. I mean, hey, UNLV went out and scheduled those teams and beat both of those teams. I wish they had gotten the win tonight because I think it would have been, another. I mean, at that point, I don't know what their schedule looks like for the rest of the year, but I'm just saying right now, 2 years ago, Tulane beat USC. So let's not act like you said earlier, there's just this massive gap between all these G5 teams and the Power Four. They just beat USC.
Yes, there is a
2 years
massive
ago.
gap.
They
There is
just
a
beat
cataclysmic
USC.
gap.
No, they just
between
beat USC 2 years ago.
Tulane.
just beat them
We're
2
really
years
comparing
ago, and you
Tulane
were
beating
ripping-
USC by 1 point as if that just narrows the gap.
You were just talking about how much of a gap there is. They just beat
Yeah, it's
them 2
massive. It
years
doesn't mean
ago.
they're going to win every single game. I mean, my goodness, even Vanderbilt occasionally wins football games, but that doesn't make them a good team, Corey. Outliers
my
do
goodness.
happen.
Corey, did you hear me recite the Group of 5 results against the Power 5 this year?
I'm not arguing the entire Group of 5. I'm arguing the best of the Group of 5. This is why I think it's a good system, because I want to see the best of the best of the, what's the right word to use? The what's the undesirables. I want to see the best of the undesirables get a chance to represent the undesirables. That's what I want. I think it makes the sport better.
Well,
and I think Tulane, and I think
they're getting that opportunity.
Tulane beating USC is great, but it's better in a playoff format.
Unfortunately, they're not going to get to play a team as flawed as USC 2 years ago. They're going to have to play the second place team in either the SEC or the Big Ten. That's exactly who they're going to play as the 5 seed.
And that's okay, because what I'm arguing, Mark, is not whether they're deserving to play the 5 seed. My argument is, are they deserving to be the 12 seed?
No.
You see what I'm saying?
They're not. They're the 50th best team in the country. They're not worthy of being in the playoff if we want the 12 best teams in the playoff.
Well,
I don't have an issue with it because I like the novelty of it, but they
then
are not one of the 12 best teams in the country.
Let's completely overturn the entire NCAA men's basketball system. Let's completely overturn the whole darn thing. Let's get rid of
Corey, do you know the difference between basketball and football?
Let's get rid of automatic qualifiers, because when we do that, there will no longer be the Peacocks to take down your Kentucky Wildcats, the Peacocks of St. Peter's to take down the Kentucky Wildcats. So let's just completely get rid of
You need to update your software because Oakland was the last team to dominate us, but Corey, the point is basketball games are fluid. You'll have random results all the time because teams get hot from 3. There's never a consistent amount of G5 football teams that beat Power 5 teams regularly. Any form or fashion of basketball.
No.
Basketball.
Okay, the question a second ago was, do we want the 12 best teams in football? So if that's what we're after, then we should want the 68 best teams in basketball. We're talking about who is deserving.
You're comparing apples to oranges. They're two different sports.
I'm not. I'm actually not. I'm saying, are we looking at the best teams in the field? The 68 best teams in basketball, the 12 best teams in football. Nobody. Are we really asking to overturn the entire college basketball system?
Because that's a different sport than this. We're talking about college football. And the data has shown us repeatedly that inferior teams cannot consistently compete, to not even win, compete against the elite of the elite and the Power 4.
And the data in basketball, Darrell MVP, the data in basketball would also say that the vast majority of the time, the Power 5 basketball team wins. So
but they win way more often than the elite of the elite in football.
Although there are upsets, there are more opportunities at upsets because of the system.
I'm just going to take a guess here that if we split the basketball schools between the Power 5 and what would be the G5, that their winning percentage, the G5, is much higher in basketball than it is.
I'm sure it is because of what Darrell said earlier, but I don't know that just completely outrules the principle of all this.
And the games are closer. I would bet that the games are closer on average.
Yeah, they're also shorter. I mean, that also has a significant factor in it.
Yeah. And this is all a matter of opinion. I mean, like I said, ultimately, I mean, I'm not arguing that UNLV, if they make the field, or James Madison or Navy, whoever makes the field out of the G5, is one of the 12 best teams in the country. We're talking about deserving to make the playoff in the current format. We know a G5 team is going to make it. I like that because I like I do like the NCAA system. I hope it never changes with college basketball because I love the idea of the little guy being able to upset. I don't want to see it, Mark. I don't want to see a world where we have, 6 Big Ten teams and 6 SEC teams. And if we're talking about the 12 best teams in the country, that might be what this ends up being year in and year out.
So
Well,
why would you
yeah.
be against it if that's the case then? If they're truly the
I
12
don't
best
find that
teams and we
I
can
don't find it
mathematically
interesting.
prove it on the football field, how about the
I
other
don't-
teams get better?
Well,
Greg Sankey
one
had a
reason-
quote yesterday on a podcast that says it's not his job to let other go down to other people's level. How about other
One
teams
reason
get
why
on
I
their
don't-
big boy boots and rise up to everybody else's level?
One reason that's don't get me started. Let's not go down that rabbit hole because then we can get into this huge discussion about college football and NIL and the powers that be and all that garbage. So we can go down that rabbit hole, but the moment that happens, the moment we just basically make this a total invitational, we've expanded the playoff and make it a total invitational like we have the 14 playoff, but now with 12, an expanded playoff and no more AQs. And that may end up happening. I don't want to see just an extension of the regular season. That's part of the reason. You asked me why I don't want to see 6-6, for instance. I don't want to see an extension of the regular season. Part of the great thing about postseason is because you get to see your team going up against teams from other conferences. So although there's going to be some cross-divisional matchups between the Big Ten and the SEC, that's part of the reason I don't like this whole Big Ten SEC scheduling topic that's been brought up in the news this week, Mark. I don't know how much you've talked about that on this show, but hey, if we're going to have 4 teams in the SEC and 4 teams in the Big Ten, potentially making the playoff on a year in and year out basis and more if we change this format, then why do we want to see these teams playing the non-conference? Other than we just want to make this a 2-conference league and completely change how we view the sport. And I know that's happened a lot with realignment already, but that's part of the reason, Durrell. I don't want to see an extension of the regular season.
I mean, Corey, aren't we already kind of there? The SEC and Big Ten are so clearly above every other conference, it's not even close. The ACC has Miami, and they might not even be elite caliber because they almost lost to Virginia Tech, and I would argue should have. The Big 12 has absolutely nobody. The Pac-12 doesn't even exist, but they're coming back to life like a zombie, and they're going to have Colorado State and Gonzaga in basketball. It's already going that way, Corey. You're trying to stop something from happening that's already happened, I would argue.
I'm not arguing that. Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that. It's definitely, I mean, conference realignment in and of itself has, when we've talked about NIL, and this really all started, right, with the rich getting richer, right? That concept trickling down into college football. And that has, I mean, don't you think this has all been a chain effect with realignment and NIL and all these things, Mark? They're all interrelated in a sense. How the sport changing, the conceptual way that we look at the sport has all been influenced by all these factors, and together they've all created what I view as the problem that we just outlined. But some people like Durrell are going to say, hey, that's okay. Let the powers that be the powers that be. And they're going to be okay with just seeing, eventually a postseason that, the only postseason people care about, featuring year in and year out, Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and just being basically the same, 12 to 20 teams year in and year out. I just don't find that interesting. So I think it all depends on how you view sports, what you take pleasure in as it relates to the sport. But I just don't view that as interesting. And part of my love of college football is the unpredictability, and that gets way too monotonous and predictable for me.
Well, Corey, I've got to ask you from a perspective. What perspective are you talking about? Bowl games going away? Because if you look over the last decade, it's been like 4 teams consistently who are in the hunt for the national championship. So I just don't understand where this perspective's coming in. I mean, I would argue college football this year and maybe last year has had more parity than since 07. And
Well,
it's
I'm
not saying a lot because there might be 5 or 6 teams who can win it this year. I mean, it's not like the sport is great parity.
I'm specifically talking about the playoff. The expanded playoff is something I think we all wanted. What I'm saying, I think the way you, in my opinion, the way you take away from playoff expansion is by eliminating AQs and basically saying that the G5 has no chance, and just making this basically a playoff of at-larges, just a total 12-team invitational. That's what I'm saying. If that happens, then the bowl games go right back to being. I mean, not that the bowl games are really affected. I'm just talking about the hope of being able to compete on a national stage for all those teams that had very little hope of doing so before playoff expansion was complete. Does that make sense?
I guess maybe this is just me as a Kentucky fan and me being so hopeless forever, but my love of the sport is you can win these minor bowl games like the Music City Bowl, the Tax Slayer Bowl, and you feel like you have a successful season. To me, the national championship, winning a playoff game, isn't even on my radar as a possibility. Like, that's how little I think about my football team and my football program. It's not even like surface level, and it hasn't been my entire life. So I think everybody kind of just needs to accept that your Big 12 fans and your ACC fans outside of the Big 3, that it's okay not to be the great. Not everybody can be number one in life. See, I know people call it a loser mentality and stuff, but you're never going to have the resources to compete with the big boys, ever. And we're going to have to learn to deal with it. And the quicker you learn to deal with it and consider 8-4, 9-3, 10, and 2 seasons successful, I think the happier your team and fan base will be.
Neither one of you were wrong. DeReal wants to see the 12 best teams in college football compete for the national championship and not there being given charity to teams just because they play in lesser leagues, And you, Corey, like that novelty to have a portion of diversity of competition and the little guy to be given a shot.
And even though the league, like, for instance, whoever comes out of the ACC, right? ACC is not as good as the SEC or the Big Ten. There's no debating that. But, say it is, it may be a bad example because you do have a couple of potential powers there in Clemson and Miami. And,
Go with the Big 12, Corey.
Go with the Big 12, yes.
Okay. So whoever comes out of the Big 12, right? Who would that be? Utah. Who's the best?
Utah.
Kansas State.
Kansas State, Iowa State, Utah.
Iowa State's a great one. Iowa State. So say Iowa State comes out of the Big 12, even though that conference is perceived to be weaker, and I think we can all agree it is, I would rather see the best team that fought through all those teams in its conference get a chance in the 12-team playoff than a team that competed hard in the Big Ten but finished 5th. I would. I just think that's, again, and like you say, Mark, that's novelty to an extent. That's just how I view it.
I tend to agree with you. I like that the group of 5 gets an opportunity. I'm just stating the fact or the logical conclusion that they're going to get murdered and that it's the 50th best team in the country. But I still like the opportunity. Otherwise, completely cut them off and let them play their own football league and never cross the power.
Well, yeah,
five
I mean, you can
group of 5.
Treat them like the FCS, right? Treat them like the FCS. You can schedule them, but their postseason has nothing to do with our postseason.
Now, to your point, Corey, whether it's this season, next season, or it takes 5 or 10 years, it's going to be truly exciting. The first time that the group of 5, the best of the group of 5, let's say that's Tulane next year, and they have a 24-20 lead halfway through the 4th quarter against Georgia or Ohio State or Alabama. Whenever that's going to happen, it will happen. It might take 10 years and it might take a lot of 50-7 games, but it will happen where we're going to be all freaking out, like some people jumping for joy, like, could this actually happen?
And you know what else that does, in my opinion? what else that does, in a sense, you look at it from this perspective, in a sense, we talk about how, I don't like the idea of having buys, right? So I think you should have went from either to 8 or 16, but you go to 12, so you got buys. So you're going after a buy, right? So that's one of my big complaints against people who say, expanding the playoff makes the regular season less important. And I could not disagree with that more. And I don't want to, we can debate that some other day. I could not disagree with that more. I think it makes it more interesting because there's more interesting games. And the other thing about it is not only are you playing, like in the NCAA tournament, you're playing for seeding, right? So many teams know midway through the season, barring a collapse, they're going to be in because it's a huge field, but you're playing for seeding. So same thing with college football, you're playing for seeding, and there's reward not only in getting a bye, but there's reward in getting the 5th spot as opposed to the 6th spot. Even though you have to play in the first game, you get to play a team that qualified. But like to your point, Mark, is a Tulane, is a James Madison, is a Liberty, is a Troy, that is probably still maybe the 50th or 60th best team. I think those are cool. That's a cool ladder of rewards for earning higher seeds in the playoff.
I've got to ask you about the framing of that point. And you talk about it as a reward. A reward feels like there's a tangible good at the other end. What is exactly the 5th seed done differently than the 6th team to earn that spot? Because the only thing I would argue they've done is the playoff committee believes they're better. And I don't think that's a valid enough reason to give the 5th seed a significant advantage. And not only a significant advantage, I would argue the 5th seed has by far the easiest path to make it to the semifinals. And to me, that's not fair because if you want to reward teams for winning their conferences, they should have easier paths than other teams that didn't.
So to lay out the path, not just for that game, but for the likely next game for the 5th seed.
So if you're the 5th seed, you're going to be playing the 12th seed, which is the group of 5 winner. That could be James Madison, Troy, UNLV, whoever, Boise State. And then after that, you're going to be playing the Big 12 champion, which is Iowa State, Kansas State, Utah, in order to get to the
semi. The second worst team in the field.
Right. And if you're the 1 seed, you're playing the 8-9 game, which I saw Josh's Pate's model. He has the 8-9 game currently is Tennessee versus Georgia. So imagine that if you're Alabama. Hey, congratulations. You get to play Tennessee as the 8th seed compared to the 5 seed Texas's path, which would have been, I think, UNLV and Iowa State. Which one of those paths do you think is easier?
Good Lord.
I guess what I
be.
And so this is, Mark, there's a reason why you cover the sport nationally and I do not. And Darrell is obviously much more invested in this than I am. But so that was, and that's my misunderstanding then. So I'll take that for what it is. I guess the way that I feel like it, I wasn't aware that it wasn't this way, and the way that I feel it should be is you can have AQs, but then you've got to seed them based on where we believe they actually deserve to be, not based on what conference they won. Does that make sense?
No, all the AQs is the top 4 seeds, and they're based on conference strength. So what that will mean most years is the SEC gets the 1 seed, the Big 10 gets the 2 seed, the ACC gets the 3 seed, and the Big 12 gets the 4 seed.
Yeah, but why are we basing it on conference strength? Shouldn't we just base it on just like we do with the NCAA tournament?
It'll be the team, how good the team is overall, but how good the team is depends on who they play. And if your conference is terrible, that's going to weigh down your resume significantly because that's the majority of your games.
Sure. I mean, but theoretically, if you go 0-3 in the non-conference mark, and then you win your conference, just because your conference is good, you went 0-3 in the non-conference, why do you deserve a spot that basically your conference has given to you?
You're getting caught up on maybe a misclarification or misstatement on my part. In an average normal year, the SEC team will be the 1 seed because Alabama, Georgia, Texas are so good that they're going to have a resume deserving of the 1 seed. The 2 seed's going to be Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, USC because they're going to have the second best resume out of the 4 AQs. Same thing for the 3 seed and the 4 seed. And the reason that will be the case is because not only because of their conference, but they're going to win their non-conference out of games the majority of the time. And that's based on past history. Now, there is years where Clemson would have probably been the 1 seed. Cincinnati in 2020, I think, would have been the 4 seed. But those are the exceptions and outliers. I'm just talking about in general. The SEC should be the 1, the Big Ten should be the 2, the ACC is the 3, and the Big 12 is the 4.
So, and let me get this straight. In other words, you're saying that the 5th seed, whoever is the 5th seed, has the easiest path, even though they have to play in game 1.
Yes, by
this
far,
is correct.
the easiest
Well,
path.
it's not as easy as the 4 teams ahead of them that don't have to play in week 1. I guess that's what I'm saying.
No. I completely fundamentally disagree with you.
Well, not
If Ohio State loses the Big Ten championship game, great, fine. Be the 5 seed, play in Columbus against James Madison, and then play Iowa State in week 2. Fine. I'll take it right now. Sign me up for that.
Yes, in principle. However, anybody playing a long season of football would rather have a week off than play against anyone, is what I'm saying.
No.
Well,
No.
I'm just telling you right now, Coach Patterson's talked about this a ton. He thinks that one of the reasons the 12-team playoff is so unfair is because you create such a divide with the bye week.
They're going
because
to
there's
have
such an advantage to teams
off.
that don't play.
They're going to have time off. They don't have to play the next week.
Right.
They're playing a conference championship game. Then they've got, if they make the conference championship game, they're playing on like December 5th. Then they're not playing for 2 full weeks.
Yeah. Well, it's still an extra game on the body is all, I mean,
yeah,
especially.
I'm guessing that the wear and tear on the body, let alone the risk of losing, taking on James Madison and Iowa State versus taking on Georgia.
See, so the 5 after the 4 seeds, let me just get this straight. After the 4 seed, the seeds after that are
1, 8, and 9.
Say that again.
They would play either the 1 seed, the 8 seed, or the 9 seed.
No, I'm asking how seeds 5 through 12
It's
are.
up to the committee. It's up to the committee.
It's up to the committee.
Okay, so that's totally up to the committee. Okay, so.
But the 5 seed is going to be the second place team in the Big Ten or the second place team in the SEC.
Then can I make a bold prediction, Mark? And I know I've been on here way too long, and I'll get off of here. Let me make a bold prediction. And this basically, I think, epitomizes you and I's disagreement on this topic. Okay. This is my guess. You may see, and it may not happen this year, but once we have a sample size of several seasons, I think you're going to see the 4 seed win in the semifinals, or in the the 4 seed win in the semifinals.
Quarters, if you're talking first game.
The 4 seed beat the 5 seed more often than maybe you think, is what I'm saying.
Well, that's not quite a declarative statement. More than I think, which is 0. So they're going to beat them once out of 10 years? Sure. Okay.
Okay. Hey, 4 seed's going to win more than you think, Mark. Right there. More than you think. It's a declarative statement.
All right.
How long do we got to go before that we...
Huh? What'd you say, Jerome?
How long do we got to keep this going to check in on it every single year before you there's enough sample size for you to change your opinion?
The overall gist that I take from this is, Mark, you probably feel like the 5 seed's going to win against the 4 seed basically every year, or will be favored basically every year, correct?
Oh, they're going to be favored.
That's fine. Well,
double digits favored, I would probably add to that most years.
But again, and if there's any substance to what I'm saying, my argument about wear and tear in the body, playing that extra game, then that's why I think we may see more 4 seed victories than you think. That's all I'm saying.
Our conversion.
Oh yeah, that physical play against UNLV is going to be the difference when they go up against the lowly Utah and Iowa State.
Okay, well, you downplay it if you want, but we'll see it play out.
Last year, we would have had Georgia as the 5 seed, as the loser of the SEC championship game, taking on, well, we've got to take Texas out of the Big 12. Oklahoma State as the best team in the Big 12, that would have been your 4-5 game.
Well, yeah. Well, let's see what it is this year, Mark. Let's see what it is this year.
Okay.
But I do believe that. I think we can. Can we all agree that if you're going to have AQs, don't guarantee an AQ a top 4 spot? There's no reason to do that.
Oh, I've been on that train for a while.
Let the committee sort that out. We don't need to guarantee anybody's spots. All they're guaranteed by winning their conference is that they're in. They're in. That's all they should be guaranteed.
I wouldn't have a committee. There would be no committee. They have too much power in college football. Way too much power.
Mark,
all right, guys.
How unhealthy has this debate been for your channel? That's the question.
I just see 385. That includes Twitter.
All right.
So you're
well,
fine.
I'm going to head out. The nice thing is, Mark, we talked earlier about the debate between Will Rogers. I'll get to see Will Rogers the next week. But we talked about the debate between Will Howard and Kyle McCord. I watched Kyle McCord tonight. I get to watch Will Rogers tomorrow against one of the best defenses in the country in Iowa. So I'll get a nice little comparison between those two teams. Now, as you know, UNLV's defense is nothing compared to Iowa's. I get that, but it will be interesting to see those two players kind of back-to-back days.
For sure.
Thanks, Mark.
It was a good discussion. Thanks, Corey. Thanks for being here. Again, Corey, Coach Don Patterson after the Iowa-Ohio State game on from the Hawkeye of the Storm. All right, Darrell, appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's great talking to you and Corey. Can't believe his takes about the little guy, but hey, you just got to punch him down, right, Mark? I know you're an elitist with being an Ohio State fan. It's frustrating to see the little guy try to punch up in your weight class, isn't it?
Well, we're in 3 different categories because you want to see the best teams compete for the national championship. Corey wants to see the little guy get his opportunity, but actually believes that the little guy has a chance. I want to see the little guy get his opportunity if we're going to keep the current structure of college football, but they don't have any chance. So
I completely agree with your opinion. If we're keeping this structure, the little guy has no chance, and everybody needs to learn to deal with it. And Corey will learn to deal with it at halftime. The first game when it's 38-3 Texas over UNLV, Boise State. I mean, what is the line of that game going to be? 42 points? It's going to be insane.
Yeah.
And I know Boise State almost beat Oregon, but that doesn't tell the full story of how good Boise State is, and that doesn't tell the full story how good Oregon is. That's just one game. It's not a playoff game. It's not going to be, playoff games are usually blowouts, and this is going to be, to me, it's going to be a Florida State-Georgia level blowout. I'm looking forward as to that. As that Super Chat says, Florida State losing 10, maybe even 11 games this season, and them crawling back into the ACC, Mark. That's going to be so fun. Maybe they should go to the Pac-12 since they want to leave the conference. They'll join people that are on their level, and they can be good talking to you.
Thanks, Darrell. All right, let's hit these Super Chats before we take 2 final calls. And we got Ukrainian mail order bride industry is booming. I had no idea. Except for I do see a lot of advertisements on social media and elsewhere. So that is good indication of that. Maybe we will have the Ukrainian mail order bride industry and one of their affiliates, one of their companies, platform sites, maybe sponsor here at the Voice of College Football. Maybe we could do that. All right. Does Florida State lose 10 games? No preseason top 10 has ever lost 10 games that particular season. Sounds right to me. We could do some digging for the top 10 preseason team that had the worst record at the conclusion of the season. This one comes to mind. Pitt, 1984, number 3 preseason, 3-7-1. There's one for you to think about. And then we finally have, Ukrainian mail order bride industry is booming. Comes back with this one. Boise State has way more credibility from playing at Oregon. UNLV is not near that level. I would agree. with that and playing as well as they did, certainly. All right, we've got a very patient Adam on the line. Adam, what's going on tonight? You're on mute, I believe.
Sorry about that, Mark. Thanks for having me on. I'll be quick. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
Good. Great show.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to digress for 1 second because the point I was going to make is unrelated to this, but I was listening to the last conversation. Great conversation with Corey and Duriel. And again, I come back to the simple point I've made. The playoff teams each year should be the playoff teams that we think will contend for the national title. So, for example, last year, the playoff should have been Texas, Washington, Alabama, Michigan, Florida State, and Georgia. 6 teams. Now, this year, it may be 5 teams. In 2022, it would have been 5 teams, with Alabama and TCU making it. So each year presents different circumstances in different contexts. So to have a 12-team uniform playoff makes no sense whatsoever because teams 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 have zero chance of winning. I know it's about money. I get that. But if we adopted a more individualized approach, we would actually have a consensus about who should be in the playoff, and it would be reflective of who actually has a chance at winning the national title. And I'm not sure why they don't do that. And then I would add on to that a best 2 of 3 for the final 2 teams. But I've been over that, so I don't want to bore anybody with that. I just had a few questions for you about the games on Saturday.
So, Adam, before you get to Saturday's games, you are making this determination about the 6 teams last year.
Yes.
Or is that some type of objective criteria?
Both. I'm basing my opinion on objective criteria, which is record, strength of schedule, dominating wins, player rosters, and I suspect that a majority of people in this country would agree that it would have been better to have Florida State and Georgia in the playoff than to have one or both of them out of the playoff, which causes controversy about who should be number 4. So it's okay to be over-inclusive to a degree. It's not good to be under-inclusive. But you also can't be too over-inclusive where we're going to have this year, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 seeds that have no shot of winning anything. And I think that we're smart enough to be able each year to look at the nuances and the context of each season and make that determination. Would you agree?
Yes, but we will never have a fluid playoff system.
Why?
It's just not going to happen. People don't think like that. And I think it's rather intriguing, as we have discussed in the past, and I do understand your rationale for it, and I generally agree with it, but I just don't see the powers that be. I'm trying to come up with these 6 teams and why they distinguish themselves from last year. Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, Florida State, Oregon, Washington?
No. Washington, Michigan, Texas, Alabama, Florida State, and Georgia.
Ohio State? You left out Oregon. No Oregon, right?
I apologize, Mark. I would have also included Ohio State.
Okay. So you'd have a 7-team field.
Yes. So that presents a lot of practical problems. How do you have a 7-team field? Okay, so we're going to have some play-in games and some buys, and we can work that out. But at the end of the day, what I've seen in the last several years is people disagreeing vehemently who should be number 4 as opposed to who should be number 5. Well, guess what? Under my system, you don't have to worry about that. They're both going to get in. And you're right about Ohio State. Ohio State should have been in last year. So should Georgia and Florida State. So why not include the teams that should be in there, but exclude the teams that do not have a realistic chance? And the reason that it's never going to happen, and you're 100% right, is because the powers that be, the people in positions of power, are typically the least intelligent and innovative of the bunch. And that is the case. I've seen it in academia. I've seen it in the legal profession. And you wonder how these people get into these positions of power, but they are the ones who think inside the box. And if you don't think outside the box, you're not going to have a system that's both inclusive but not unnecessarily overbroad and not unnecessarily exclusive. But like you said, it won't work. So
I think because if you take risks, calculated smart risks as an entrepreneur, then that pays off. That results in reward. But if you do that within a formal structure that's been in place for a lot of the time, and you have to win like political battles against, the hierarchy of the structure, then it's a losing game because you can't get enough support on your side because you're the outsider. You're trying to break from tradition. You're trying to think outside the box, and to get the majority on your side to turn over the system is extremely difficult to do.
yes, because they feel threatened by it, because it,
Yeah.
it challenges everything they've always assumed. And I think you're right.
During the off season, Adam, we will go through, if you would like, we should go through each football season and determine, okay, how many teams should have made the playoffs this year, and then go through each season.
Fair enough. I look forward to that, Mark. Thank you.
That would be fun.
So I was just going to ask you a couple of questions. I'll be quick about tomorrow's games. I'm going to go out on the ledge here and predict Arkansas upsets Tennessee. The second question I had for you is, and I'm truly curious about this, I don't know how good Georgia is, and I'm wondering how good you think they are. I just can't really make a determination about that yet. I also think that UCLA and Penn State's going to be much closer than people think. And I think Ole Miss is going to beat South Carolina. USC will beat Minnesota. What do you think about the Arkansas upset?
I think that that's a strong possibility. I do not think that that's a given that Tennessee wins a game. Arkansas, dating back to last season, if you check out their results, have played really well against the best teams on their schedule. They played LSU close last year. They played Alabama within 4 points. They've done the same this year. They should be an undefeated football team right now. They're playing at home. Yeah, I could see that happening. Obviously, the projection that you're making is more unlikely to happen, but you're taking a stab at a reasonable upset. But it's still an upset. Therefore, it's most unlikely to happen. But I would say Arkansas has a 35% chance of winning this game.
I think that's accurate. And as far as Georgia goes, here's my concern about Georgia. It's their defense. They are not the defense of 2021, 2022. But when I look at the first half versus the second half, I saw two different Georgia teams. So I don't know how good they are. And when they have to go at Texas, at Ole Miss, I would say that if Georgia has 3 losses, they could be a team that could get into the playoffs because of the schedule and because of their potential. Do you agree with that?
Oh, sure, they could. So they have one game under their belts that's a loss, but it was a 1-score down to the wire loss in which they, of course, had this remarkable comeback, and it may turn out to be against the SEC champion. So just look at what kind of respect they're being given in the polls.
Yeah.
I don't exactly know what their ranking is, but it's like 3 or 4. So they barely moved off their ranking. So yeah, if they go to Texas and lose, and so you're having them, let's say, lose to Ole Miss as well?
No, but I'm saying it's possible that they could lose to Ole Miss, but I do think they will lose to Texas. But if they did slip up against Ole Miss, I would still include them in the top 12.
So under that circumstance, depending on how Kentucky finishes, and if Kentucky reaches the level that most of us expect them to be, let's say a 7-5 team, then Georgia's only going to have one significant win, I believe, and that would be against Tennessee. Well, they beat Clemson. So, yeah, I think that they would have a resume. Again, we're talking about something that's in a vacuum that's not in reality in a vacuum. So I can't make that determination because I don't know what the rest of the scenario looks like.
Yeah, and I also think that people are jumping on the Alabama train too early. Let's remember, Georgia had 4 turnovers, 3 interceptions and a fumble by Beck, and a defense that was lost and not prepared in the first half. But if you look at Milroe's performance in the first half versus the second half, it was a tale of two halves. And if you look at Alabama's secondary, Georgia had Beck had 439 passing yards, most in the second half. So I think that it's too early to tell. But I guess the last point I'll make is UCLA. UCLA was down 24-17 in the third quarter against LSU. UCLA was down 28-10, I believe, at the half against Indiana. I think they match up well with Penn State. I don't think Penn State has the strongest offense. I think it could be closer than people think. Do you think that that's too far out there?
Slightly. I agree with you in this way, that Penn State showed us last week that if James Franklin is confident that his defense is going to just control the game, that he will be ultra conservative and play a pretty, close to the best type of game as they did against Illinois, where they had to score a touchdown with 3 or 4 minutes left to open it up to 21-7. So it was a 14-7 game forever, that this could be something similar to that. And they're like a 28-point favorite. I could see them winning it a 24-13 game.
Yeah, I could see that too. Well, the last thing I'll say is I think there's going to be a major upset tomorrow. I think it's going to be Arkansas. And in the offseason, I look forward to going through those teams who we think should be in the playoff. Thanks so much for taking my call, Mark. Always good to talk to you.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks. Have a great night.
So we were pushing for overtime tonight. And our goal was to get to overtime, which I've already gone way into overtime at this point. But that was our goal. Let's see where we stand on this. We're just barely shy of our goal here. Let's see, 2, 7, 12, just barely shy. 17, 22, 27, just barely shy. Ukrainian mail order bride industry is booming. Man, you may want to tighten that up. You could go with an acronym. When this becomes something, then you go to the acronym and everybody knows what you're talking about. You go with UMOBIB. That's even a mouthful. The next CFP will be 16 teams with guaranteed spots. 4 to the SEC, 4 to the Big Ten, 2 to the ACC, and 2 to the Big 12. 1 group of 6 and 3 at large. So the SEC or the Big Ten would get 7. Okay. That could be. 14 is what's being discussed, but if they go to 16, I don't think anyone would be surprised. More games, more money. And while we were on the topic before we take this last call with Adam about looking at previous college football seasons and what playoff structures could have looked like, be on the lookout for this one. We will drop the link at some point here soon. Disputed National Champions, college football's historical 1990s reset by yours truly. It's a good read. I guarantee it. If you love college football, and I believe you do because you're here, then you can pick it up on Amazon. A lot of scenarios, a lot of situations, a lot of rankings, a lot of narratives, a lot of who got left out, a lot of was the vote valid or credible? And then what that season meant to college football history, because I determined this 1990s to be the most transcendent and transformative period in college football, the most transformative decade in the history of college football in regards to determining a champion. And we also took each one of these seasons, 1990 through 99, and we put it not just into context for its particular year, but we moved it up into the BCS era, into the 4-team college football playoff era, into the 12-team era, and into the projected 14-team college football playoff era to give you a look at what those formats would have looked like with those teams competing in those different models. All right, welcome to the Voice of College Football. We got Defiant on the line. Thanks for being patient tonight, Defiant.
No, it's okay, Mark. It's only 11 o'clock here, so, I'm on the West Coast, so it's a little bit early still over here. So all good in that part. I wanted first, I guess, on a discussion of the playoffs, out of the G5, which I'm considering be the best of G5, UNLV, Boise State, Army, Air Force, Sam Houston, Liberty, out of those, who would you think potentially has the best resume at the end of the season? For instance, if Boise State loses to UNLV and then beats them in the conference championship, and then if Army or Navy has one loss, and then if Sam Houston, beats Liberty and somehow has one loss too, who would you think has the best resume out of those champions potentially?
So I would say the first criteria is who plays in the best conference, and that would be most likely the Mountain West. So that's your first consideration. Then after that would be who plays the most difficult non-conference schedule. And certainly Boise State has played the most difficult non-conference game, and they performed extremely well in that game. Now, UNLV has played the most difficult 3 games of a non-conference schedule in taking on Kansas, Houston, and Syracuse and winning 2 of 3 and being highly competitive, of course, tonight. But that Boise State game at Oregon, as long as they come through this with a comparable record to any of those teams, they're going to have the best resume.
So even if Army or Navy loses to Notre Dame at a neutral site, you would still give Boise State the edge over them if they finish 12-1.
Well, are they going to lose 37-34 on a walk-off field goal?
I don't know. Probably not. Probably not. But I know how the committee looks at the one loss. I'm like, oh my God, Army and Navy, they lost one game, but Boise State lost to UNLV as an other loss.
Oh, you're giving Boise State another loss.
Yeah, I'm saying Boise State and UNLV split. Okay. UNLV wins regular season and Boise State wins in the conference championship.
Well, again, it's just going to be a comparison of resumes, and they're going to take the team that they think has the best resume. Now, last year they made a just ridiculous mistake. I don't know how it can be justified in any way, taking Liberty over SMU.
Mm-hmm.
There was no Liberty played one of the 5 worst schedules in the country, and SMU had an undefeated record in the best conference in the group of 5.
I just want to say I had a luxury of going to that Fiesta Bowl last year when Oregon demolished Liberty. So I do see your point on that. Yeah, I said it
even before that game was played. I didn't need to see that game to say that, well, SMU lost 2 games, sure, but they played 2 Power 5 teams, and Liberty played none. So if you just look at competition against the group of 5, well, SMU went undefeated. They both went undefeated, but SMU played in the best conference in the group of 5, and they played the likes of Tulane and others. It was a dumb decision.
Oh, no, I definitely agree. And if Liberty goes undefeated again, I don't think they deserve it. They're going to get blown out against a team on the SEC or Big Ten team. And you don't need to see that until, I don't think the fans want to see a blowout in the first round. At least make it competitive. Like, I want the G5 to be a competitive team. I want G5 to be a team that hypothetically they can beat, whoever. And I don't think Liberty, if they go undefeated, deserves it, because Liberty did not play a tough non-conference this year again. So I really don't think Liberty could be that team if they go 12-0, because they'll be playing 11 games.
Now, during the 14 playoff, the committee was fairly consistent. That's not the right way to phrase it. They showed us that when given the decision of determining whether a team looked the part, that they, for example, they kept out teams that suffered blowout losses, even if they had better wins, better records across the board, because they didn't want to see a team show up and get blown out. So Boise State would have the one competitive game against a playoff caliber team that would show that they could be competitive.
No, I definitely agree. And again, these non-conference, eventually I would think the G5 just need to schedule a tough non-conference just so they can get consideration, especially if you're a lesser league like the MAC or the CUSA, where your competition in your conference isn't that good. To be honest with you, again, Liberty goes to play Sam Houston. Sam Houston's one of the other teams that has a record over 500 in the conference. And Sam Houston hasn't played that anybody either. So I do think really it's going to be coming down to Boise State and maybe whoever wins the American or potentially the Sun Belt.
Well, when you size it down to the MAC in particular, I think for financial considerations, you don't have to stretch their non-conference schedules in any such way. They all play extremely difficult non-conference schedules. They get hammered every week. The typical MAC non-conference schedule is like an FCS and then 3 pretty good to elite Power 5 teams. And of course, they lose all those games. But so if anybody would emerge out of the MAC, that means that they would have been, competitive or win some kind of ridiculous game against Tennessee or Ohio State or somebody.
Oh no, I'm not saying the MAC is a horrible conference. I'm just saying they beat up on each other every year.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you're saying that. I'm just saying that you made some kind of statement about non-conference or these group of 5 teams scheduling difficult non-conference games, and that is not a concern in the MAC. You can go from team to team. They're all playing very good teams out of conference because they have to financially.
Mm-hmm.
They have to go get a paycheck 3 times.
Yeah, no, it's crazy that the MAC can do it. But no, again, CUSA, I believe, is one of those conferences where you need to schedule better non-conference could be a consideration. Because, again, if Liberty goes undefeated and if the committee somehow puts Liberty in the playoff, Liberty's going to get destroyed again. It's going to be a repeat of the Oregon game last year. And there's going to be talk about, the G5 doesn't deserve to be there. No, the committee made the wrong decision of putting undefeated Liberty in there. It's not that the G5 is bad. It's just you didn't pick the right representative to make it.
Sure.
To 12-team playoff.
Eastern Michigan played Washington. Okay. Let's see. Buffalo, I know, played Missouri.
And they also beat NIU as well.
Yeah, but I'm looking at Power Conference teams. Central Michigan, they played Illinois. So there's not as many as I thought. Let's see. Ohio played Syracuse and Kentucky. Toledo played Mississippi State. And okay, that's it. Then we got Kent State, of course. They played Tennessee and Penn State. Good Lord. That's who was coming to mind. Akron, of course, played Ohio State and South Carolina and Rutgers. Now, Northern Illinois, of course, played Notre Dame, and they also played NC State, who's usually good. Ball State played Miami and Vandy. So, yeah, Western Michigan played Wisconsin, Ohio State. Who else? Let's grab somebody else. Bowling Green played Penn State and Texas A&M. So, yeah, there's plenty of difficult games for the MAC to lean on if they were ever competitive against those teams.
No, yeah, I just don't really follow the MAC as much anymore as I used to. Not living back in Indiana, Ball State, and all that. So I really don't know how their schedules have been the last couple of years. I know, again, you got the Big Ten in your backyard, so you can go up to Wisconsin, go up to Illinois, and get blown out and still get your decent paycheck. And then, secondly, about the whole playoff and expansion too. Eventually, I would think that we would go to a 24 team model, kind of somehow like the FCS has. And at that point, I would say you would have the top 8 be the conference champions, depending on what they are. Maybe the top 5 still be a conference champion. I think you need the AQs in the playoff because you want the teams to have reward for playing in a tough conference or winning a conference, if that makes sense. Like, if you don't have any AQs, what does it make sense for Ohio State to they win a conference, but there's no reward at the end? You don't get home field advantage. You don't get a bye or something. It'll be pointless at that point.
So 24 teams. So there have to be buys. And so that's what you're stating is that. So how does that work out? Do you have 8 buys? Is that what it is?
In the FCS, the top 8 get a bye to the quarterfinal, and then the rest play in like the first round, I believe. I'm going off kind of that model.
Yeah.
That's my suggestion.
So unless college football changes considerably, I don't know how you're going to fit the current system into 8 buys and to do it equitably, fairly.
I know. I was just suggesting that as like in the future, not like right now. But if we go to 16, eventually, they want more money, so you will have to keep expanding the playoff till you get that sweet spot of the games, and you get more money from it as well.
Yeah. Then they're going to have to reduce the regular season, or they're going to have issues with players opting out of games.
And indeed, and that's why I think we should have went to the 8-team first out of the 12 team. Expanded bit by bit, expanded at 4 at a time. And so jumping right to the 12-team playoff. Because in the 8-team, you would still have that competitiveness with the 8-team. With the 12-team, you can have maybe a playing game. I don't know if the playing game would make sense for that.
So what's your format with 8 teams? You got 5 conference champions, or I'm sorry, you've got 4 conference champions in a group of 5, and then you have 3 at large.
Yes.
And nobody gets a bye.
Yeah. Kind of like how NBA playoffs work. You just have a top seed play the 8 seed, 2 play 7.
But then you've got conference championship games that are somewhat meaningless.
That's very true. And I think that's also with the 12 team a little bit as well. You have the advantage playing the 12 seed or 11 seed, but you're still going to really get in.
Well, you don't play the 12 or 11 seed. You don't play.
I'm saying for the second place team, whoever loses the conference championship.
Oh, yeah.
I'm saying, because you'll still have to play in the first round no matter what. And again, I think buys are important to it, but I think we should have went to the 8 first and then eventually gone to the 12. Or maybe have a playing game with the 8-team playoff, but I don't think that'd be just too much confusing for people to understand how that would work.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Yeah,
all right, Defiant, anything else?
I would say this, Mark. Hopefully Indiana goes undefeated again, 6-0. We play Northwestern tomorrow. I would want to say the Ohio State game is going to be pretty interesting to watch against Iowa. I know that game's probably not going to be close as used to be. Do you see potentially Oregon winning next week against Ohio State, or do you see that kind of being a toss up between the two?
Potentially, well, sure,
yeah,
they can win. Of course, they can win.
Do you see it being?
What are you asking for a prediction?
No, I'm not saying would it be a competitive game, or because I know how Oregon and Ohio State kind of match up. I know they haven't played inferior competition yet, so this would be the first big game for both, really.
Yeah, I could see all sorts of teams competing with Ohio State. Yeah, on a given Saturday, sure. I think Ohio State's better than Oregon, but not by that much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it could go both ways, especially at Eugene. If it was at Columbus, I would give Ohio State the advantage a little bit, but it should be a good game. I think it could be a shootout potentially. I think they are both really good offenses. Their defenses are pretty good too, and I know again they haven't played anybody really that good yet. I know Iowa for Ohio State's kind of decent. I know Oregon took care of Michigan State tonight, but there's the first half of schedules are not that good. This is really the first big test for both of them.
Yep. All right, Defiant. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. Ohio State and Oregon. Yeah, it's going to be a great game, we would expect. And certainly either team can win the game for sure. Well, we appreciate y'all being here at the Voice of College Football. We are way over time. And Uncle Rico, thank you so much for just, hey, yeah, money. Trying to get us to overtime, and we already went overtime, way overtime anyway. So appreciate you being here. We'll be back for post game, of course, after all the big games on Saturday night. Be looking out for our instant analysis videos as well, right here at the Voice of College Football. College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.